Okay, so Ryan's here. Ryan Cristiàn of the Last American Vagabond is here, and everyone's talking about the fires out in California, but we're actually going to talk about a mysterious weather event that has preceded this, which caught my attention because I noticed one particular video on my YouTube channel from a year ago drastically tick up in views. And I will tell you what it was about in a second. But what Ryan and I are going to be talking about at the beginning of all this is an article like this. Okay, this is KFox 14. Mysterious fog has people worried about chemical exposure. People from around the country are taking to social media to report a mysterious chemical smelling fog. They say the smell is so heavy that it's making them sick to even breathe it in. People are posting on X from coast to coast. Here's somebody from Georgia, definitely had a strong chlorine chemical smell. And here's a video. I can play this while you're talking, Ryan. I'll show what this person's picturing while driving, hopefully in the passenger seat. I don't know. What did you see on this? Because I know you think this is kind of a nothing burger, but it is reflective of something larger. So let's just stick to fog real fast. Like, is this just fog? Were the people thinking, hey, we're being poisoned, or it has something to do with nanotechnology totally off? What's your read on the fog first before we go further into it?
Yeah, well, I mean, as far as I can tell already, by the way, that story has completely fallen off as far as I can tell. Like, it's like the drones or the fog. And, to start off on these conversations, it's important to highlight that I don't necessarily think it's a nothing burger. Like, I think that most of these stories are built around something. I mean, literally could be something that is not what they're making it out to be. But I mean, there's something around these things, like, for example, the smell or something like that. My point, though, is that it's important to see how rapidly these partisan conversations just go haywire, right? Just people dumping in things from 4 years ago, or images that are altered, or, I mean, this isn't even unique. This happens every time now, and but that's what free speech looks like. Let's be real about that. That's people can lie. That's how it works. But for me, the first thing I noticed was all these overlapping points to it, right? Like, it's interesting. Like, okay, I'm over here covering, for example, dioxin releases and chlorine chemical releases and different things that are wildly important that this time around in Conyers got basically zero coverage by the partisan media, despite being larger than East Palestine and objectively by the results, one of the largest dioxin releases in history, but no one seems to care about that. And so it's interesting that during things like that, or while we're becoming more aware of these in some cases, that you have this conversation about some mysterious fog and the smell of chlorine. My point is that nobody should dismiss this. We should all be doing our due diligence to go, what is this about? What's the evidence? What can we prove? Other than somebody saying I smell this because they read that online and go out and kind of think, maybe I do smell chlorine, or maybe they just want to lie because they're enjoying the conversation, or maybe they're really smelling something. The point is, until we can actually prove it, it is just a story, right? And so the problem is the partisan narrative goes crazy every time. When you look into the story, it looks like a bunch of hypothetical conversations about what they think they're looking at, bolstered by a lot of online reports about what you can, as far as I can tell, doing due diligence, which I do, and all these when I look into them, I can't find anybody who actually is like, I know for sure this is what we saw. Some people that were in the same areas that didn't smell anything. So I kind of put it aside as, well, it's up in the air, right? We should never just disregard it, especially when who knows what's going on today. But then on top of it, you got all these videos of people shooting a flashlight. And in most of the cases I saw, embarrassingly, just basically what fog looks like when a light shined on it. And that's kind of how this works, is people jump out and go, oh my God, look, I can see things in the air, but they've never done that before, Mm-hmm. So to me, it became a kind of a social contagion story. But if we find something more that develops into it, like we can prove some of these things, then let's keep looking into it. But I think I get interested where it intersects with those other stories. I actually just thought about the chem exposure part of it and maybe that part, but bringing it into like to your point earlier, why that story exploded, or people started looking up smart dust.
This product has been a really amazing assistance in my journey in dental health. Okay, this is greenpasture.org, promo code Allison. My dad's an orthopedic surgeon. He was told by his dentist years ago that he was going to need to get root canals. He didn't really understand what the purpose of a root canal was. If you're interested in learning about root canals, by the way, I interviewed a biological dentist a month ago who says you should not get root canals. You should have your tooth pulled. But go watch the video if you're somebody who's considering one of those to see why he had to say that. Anyway, this got my dad into natural health, where it has totally revolutionized the way he practices medicine as a surgeon, but it changed the way he looked at dental health. And this is one of the products he started taking. Like I said, it's a fermented cod liver oil. It's mixed with a high vitamin D butter oil. And these two work together synergistically to help you absorb the maximum vitamins and omega fatty acids that Dr. Weston Price, a biological dentist from the turn of the century, noticing lots of his patients were getting cavities, started studying indigenous cultures, looking at how people who had no dentists but had no cavities, what was their eating style like? What kind of vitamins were they getting in their foods? And this is a formulation basically he came up with. I used to get cavities all the time. I'd go to the dentist every 6 months like I was supposed to, and they would always tell me I had a cavity. Started taking this product, and I also started reducing sugar in my diet. But actually back then I was still a kind of a sugarholic. I'll be honest with you. I cut sugar a year ago. I swear sugar is the devil. But anyway, we could do a totally separate episode on that. Anyway, I started taking this. I went to the dentist, no cavities. Years, no cavities. And you know what? They never asked me what I did differently or how I changed things. Anyway, if you want 10% off, you use the promo code Allison, greenpasture.org. They've got lots of great products here. There's all kinds of stuff like concentrated butter oil blends and fermented skate liver oil, cod liver oils, coconut products, minerals and supplements. They've got chest rubs like the natural kind of Vicks vapor rub. You're somebody who doesn't want to use the chemicals in that, but you want something that's got like eucalyptus and is made out of their oils, the oils, their fish oils and stuff. It's really great stuff. I rub it on my chest whenever I have a stuffy nose or on my kid's chest, and it works just the same, but without all the chemicals. Greenpasture.org, promo code Allison.
We've been covering this. You've been talking about this for a long time now. A very important story. So I get the sense this is about sort of trying to, maybe just by taking advantage of a story that went crazy, or because they made this happen, kind of trying to bury the reality of what this is, because I feel like it's just about to become undeniable, to keep hiding, essentially. So
yeah, talking about this nanotechnology, you're saying this smart test.
To be clear, nanotechnology specifically includes nanoparticles, which technically don't even have to be like robotics or whatever you want to call it today. It's kind of an archaic term, just like lipid nanoparticles, for example. Then it can overlap into things that are like nanotech robot, like, devices essentially that can be, basically robots, but it's an archaic term. Then you can get into the level of smart dust. Now, these are all in the same category. Smart dust simply means that they are particulate size, like the smart dust, or even the point of virus-sized elements, like Charles Lieber was working on in 2011 with Harvard, which is ultimately a person who's directly connected with Bob Langer to the tech and the entire conversation of the COVID-19 injections. And he was working on things called virus-sized transistors in 2011. So the point is there's a whole scale there, but the idea is simply things that you could throw into the air like dust. You wouldn't be able to see it. It can scatter through the air. It can land on your skin. It can be run by your body's energy. I'll play these clips directly from these symposiums and conversations and government information. My point is that as long as we've been talking about this, and this story goes back decades, plural, it still gets regarded like a ridiculous story. So now we're coming to a point to where it's been technologically possible for decades, to where it's impossible to hide. And that's where I think this intersection is kind of happening and why that's exploding. But the question is, why did it become allowed to be seen? Why is it all of a sudden being highlighted in partisan spheres, but around a story that's meant to, I think, be seen as ridiculous? Those are the questions.
All right, what we're looking at right now is my YouTube studio. This is the video Ryan and I did exactly a year ago, almost to the day, about smart dust. And we're looking at the last 28 days. And you can see like literally no views until about December 30th. And that's when I saw all of a sudden one of my top videos for views on YouTube was this smart dust video. And I'm thinking, what is going on here? So I text Ryan. He was like, oh, it's because of the fog conversation. I don't even know what the fog conversation is. But yeah, this is what caught my eye, was just this spike in views. And then it's going back down again, just in case anyone's interested in the suppression of my channel.
Right.
2.6 thousand views in the last 28 days for this video, which is 999% more than the previous 28 days.
Yeah.
As you mentioned earlier, maybe a lot of people are kind of taken aback when you say the thing, why are we allowed to see something at a particular time? That's something that I didn't really consider, especially when I was in mainstream news. It took me a while to really understand that in alternative news. But now I really question every time something happens where everybody's chattering about a particular topic and there seems to be very clearly delineated ways of discussing it. So not just that it's in front of us, but that the ways people are talking about them seem to be very either politically delineated or in some other way, this side versus that side. And then you're like, okay, what is going on here? Why are we talking about this now? This has been around for a long time. So Ryan, let's go right to smart dust then, if you don't mind. Do you want me to pull up one of your videos or?
Well, first, let's see. Oh, here, yeah, let me bring up my screen share first so I can go to that if I need to. It's just my other things I have up.
Okay.
But really, the first on that point though, it's interesting. It's important to think about how this works. It doesn't always have to be some event that's like coordinated, planned out, and executed, right? Things just happen. Like, or things can, randomly, because some huge influencer makes a huge thing, or maybe your video got a lot of attention, so now that topic is seeding into the the point is they algorithmically or just by observation, social engineers, people who have an interest in controlling your opinion, they see these things, right? And they can then utilize those conversations. So like the drone, for example, the drone's not a false conversation. Like these have been reported going back a while. Like, well, you could still argue they're lying about it, but you can see drones, for example, there's an interesting conversation there. But so just because it became obviously ridiculous or that there's fake information added to it doesn't mean that it started false, but that's just, question everything, right? It's important to see it that way. But so going back to my share, my window here, if you bring up my screen share.
Coming. Yep.
Just to start, this is what I was just talking about the other day. And it's important to see all of this in regard to the partisan social media part of it as 5th generation warfare, whether they know they're a part of it or not. Like, really important. If you don't look more into that, if you don't understand what the term means, it's a very broad concept that relates to the way that propaganda is being applied to us today. And it's, false groups, false flags, psychological operations, even the technological side of it. And I just simply titled it Drones, Fog, False Flags, and Political Destabilization. So that's kind of where I see all of this coming together. So getting into the point in general, we've been talking about this for a long time. Right, this goes back to 2016. Neural smart dust connects brain and computer. And so what's important to think about is the way they're presenting like the neural link idea today as like the future. They've been so far beyond the brain machine interface direct connection for a long time. In fact, I'll just show this right now. Here is an article. Where was that? How smart dust could spy on your brain. Intelligent dust particles embedded in your brain could form an entirely new form of brain-machine interface, engineers say. 2013. Interestingly enough, Elon Musk started Neuralink 3 years later to begin the direction to make wires into your brain. I think that's a red herring, quite frankly, which is not an uncommon opinion. That's MIT Technology Review. But my point is, this is not a new conversation. We talked about this in January 22nd, 2024, trying to recapsulate how clear that was. And I highlighted it as, is smart dust already in use in the population? And was COVID-19, in quotes, just an attempted experimental next step? I genuinely think that is a likely conversation. Like, that seems to be where we're going. And so I also covered this in regard to a patent. This is from 2024 as well. And I think you and I talked about this just to show you how real this stuff is, whether patents or not, or real. Like, there are people that argue this is just something that's hypothetical or, not real. But I do believe that they're at least putting forward information that shows that it is being used, and that goes back a long way. Of course, they could be lying about it, but this is Wells Fargo. They have a patent that goes all the way to 2037 for quite literally smart dust. And it's exactly what it sounds like. The MEMs, or the electromechanical, systems. And it simply says the devices may have sensors that collect data and transfer it to a base station device. And if you read it, basically what it shows you is an ATM that spits out smart dust and basically confirms who you are. This is terrifying. This is real-time stuff. They're really working on this. So I want to start with this older video that we've already shown, just a quick part of it. This is a video from 10 years ago. Okay, and it's a conference, a symposium around the conversation of smart dust. Really, it's called The Inevitability of Smart Dust. In this video, he's pointing to what I'm going to show you that is something that is 10 years before this conference. So at right about now, it's like 20 years ago, this was what they were working on, and that's at least what we knew of. So I want you to think about what we now are being shown and realize that this is DARPA and overlapping with sort of like a Chinese, there's two different versions he shows, and both basically this is 20 years ago. So imagine what they're doing now. So let me play this first. Oh, the one with the green part on it. Play that.
The smart dust one?
Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
The devices, the computing behind those interfaces aren't going to go away. They're going to just become invisible. We're still essentially at the banging the rocks together stage for this sort of stuff. And you haven't really seen anything yet. So this is closer to the end of the vision.
Muted, sorry. So that's a salt crystal. That's one small piece of salt. Okay, 20 years ago, that Mu chip was the size of one of these smart dust. So these are technological. I mean, think of them like a robot, but that's an archaic term. But he'll get into it. They're able to two-way communicate. They use your body's energy. These things can literally, as he says, scatter them like dust, use wind currents to blow around and spy on you, or relay information, or getting into what we'll end with today, some really terrifying kind of neuroscience directions it's going into.
This is this powder-sized chip. And that's a salt crystal. So this is a small thing. is something called the Mu chip from Hitachi. It's the smallest commercially available RFID system in the world and can be pulse powered by radio waves. It doesn't require a battery. You can literally scatter this stuff like dust or embed it into a sheet of paper. And you know what the really interesting thing about this?
Now, that's the oldest way to discuss this, kind of the State Department's, spy aspect of it, where and I'll play Julian Assange talking about this a while ago, talking about that exact idea of like putting these in paint and painting houses, putting it in the walls. Like they've evolved to where we're literally talking about just ambient stuff in the air, right? My point is I'm worried about if we're at a point now where this has become like a ubiquitous reality, and we don't even know that until finally that rug is pulled and they go, well, we're here now. Sort of like the glyphosate that's everywhere, the dioxins that are poisoning us all around the world, or, all these things that we kind of becoming aware of are ubiquitous, but they just don't acknowledge it yet. That's what I think this might be.
This technology is. This was commercially released 10 years ago. So the inevitability of smart dust. So what is smart dust? Well, smart dust, of course, isn't a new concept. It originated with DARPA back in the 90s. And it's general purpose computing, sensors, wireless networking, all bundled up into millimeter scale sensor modes, drifting in the air currents, flecks of computing power settling on your skin, ingested, monitoring you inside and out.
That's crazy.
And if you don't think that's possible, this is the Michigan micro mode. It's
now,
cubic.
I think that's somebody's skin, or it might be a penny. I'm not sure. It's super. It's about the size of the other one he's talking about, as he's about to tell you.
DARPA back in the 90s. And it's general purpose computing, sensors, wireless networking, power settling on your skin, ingested, monitoring you inside and out. And if you don't think that's possible, this is the Michigan micro mode. It's a cubic millimeter in size. And in deference to the speaker before, yes, it runs an ARM processor. It's a tiny computer, and it features data processing, data storage, wireless comms, and it's probably as close to the true smart dust vision from the early DARPA days as we've come so far. They're designed to harvest energy from the environment around them and to communicate via a mesh network. And
that's what I worry about, like the mesh network dynamic. That's something I think they were trying to accomplish with what happened with the COVID injections. Now, a lot of this is theoretical, my own opinions, right? I'm being clear about that. But everything we're showing you is factual information. But I believe that's how a lot of this interconnects. So going back to my screen share, I'll remove that and add another one. Going back to the screen share. So, ultimately
there we go.
That goes, yeah, for my screen share. Yeah, there you go. And this is from, 10 years ago, talking about 10-year-old technology. Now here's Julian Assange, and this was in 2018. He was talking about this, and this is just what he decides to call this, and it's the same conversation.
Ryan, I have this too.
I don't think by
hang on
chopping out
this. You want to play this one or the other one? I have both Assanges.
Oh, this is the only one right here, the one you're playing.
Oh, okay. Well, I had another one that you pulled up. Okay, go for it.
No, that was the video. This is the.
Oh, that was it?
Yeah, there you go.
Of them,
you want to play
adding, kind of chaff, cover. That you can make that much of a difference, and increasingly it's less. And in terms of Internet of Things, there's research prototypes now, which I assume are being used by intelligence agencies, of very small electronic circuits that you can just put in paper or put in paint or on the walls that are powered by the GSM stations, and they operate as the GSM radio wave passes through them. It gives them enough power for a very small amount of time to do things. So obviously that tendency is going to continue. It's not like the Internet of Things. It's if you like, intelligent evil dust scattered everywhere, like confetti in everything. So
intelligent evil dust sprouted like confetti in everything, right? And so realize, even in 2018, when he's having this conversation, he's referring to something that is the common knowledge about it, but realizing in MakerCon or the conversation there, or the government's own documentation, it shows that that's they're well beyond that. Like even then, showing you a 10-year-old tech that could mesh communicate, use your own body's energy. So it doesn't require the radio waves he was discussing, but that is one element of this. And now obviously you get into different levels of computation or ability, and you might need to have different levels of influence, but nonetheless, that was what was capable all the way back then.